Okay, nice. Okay, so hi guys. Welcome to this next lecture on team building and team management. I believe most of you guys would have sat in for my morning lecture earlier on leadership styles, and I believe that most, if not all of you here, are NCOs of your respective core. So I hope this lecture can help you understand better on how to manage yourselves, NCOs as a team, and also manage the cadets in your core. So I expect more absorption in this lecture as well as a lot of self-reflection on your part. So you'll find that I'll be more active in asking you guys questions in this lecture. Okay. So what do you want to take out of this lecture of team building and management? First of all, I will be going through this model called Tuckman stages of team development. Like the four leadership styles, we have also broadly classified this into four basic stages of team development. And in each of these stages, your role as a leader shifts. And I'll also be teaching you guys some theory on conflict management and how to better understand your team. I also hope that by now it's clear that this lecture is going to be very much interlinked with the leadership styles lecture that was covered earlier today. So let's begin with the Tuckman model. The four stages that I mentioned earlier are forming, storming, norming, and performing. They are in order. So our last stage is actually adjourning. This is when the team has hopefully achieved its agenda and disbands. So we won't be looking at that stage lah. Since we're talking about team building and management, the end goal is of course to understand these stages so as to help us build an effective team. So let's look at the key traits of an effective team. When you look at these traits, does it sound like your platoon? An effective team is supposed to have trust and is committed to achieving the same goal. There is good communication and everybody is assigned to something that he is good at. With this, doesn't really apply when you're a cadet learning a syllabus, because the syllabus is fixed, it is taught to all of you guys. But it soon matter a lot now that you guys are NCOs, because all of you are in charge of separate things, right? Very, very specific to your job kind of things. Lastly, accountability, meaning that you feel responsible not only because it is your job, but also because you know that others are relying on you to do your job well. Okay, so I hope that you guys have taken the time to watch this video because I won't be going through them again. Now let's say that your group of 5 friends become to the stage 1 of forming. You guys, your task is to grow a garden. So what are some possible traits of the group at this stage? I notice here in the diagram how everyone here seems to know what they're talking about. Some are talking about the farming tools they need. Some are talking about the crops, tomatoes, broccoli. These guys are somewhat experienced. Okay, so perhaps I'll give you all 1 minute to think about the question, the possible traits of which a group might face at a forming stage. Okay, so now let's look at some traits of the group at the forming stage. So at this stage, your team members are very much still getting to know each other, and there may be a lot of uncertainty. So you all might remember this from the video you all watched previously about the Avengers and about Titans, where you can see how at the start for the Avengers, before they went into their mission, they didn't really know what to do, and maybe you have observed what Captain America did at a point in time. So for those of you who may not have had the time to watch the video, you all might catch the video at your own convenience. But for those of you all that have managed to caught the videos, I hope that those videos will help you to facilitate your understanding better as I continue going through the different stages. So now let's give a more local context. So um, let's say if you were to grab, let's say if um if you were to grab 5 Sec 1s from your core right now and tell them to start farming, you might expect a higher uncertainty from them than if you were to say to grab like this professional team of farmers to help you guys, right? So even at this stage of team development, two teams might have very different needs, and and the team leader approach would definitely not be the same. So personally, I feel this very strikingly as a leader. Back when I was trainer for my zone camps, and I went back for basic NCO course as well as for advanced NCO course, because um, back when I was a trainer, I did icebreakers for the two camps, and I really felt the difference between the the day one cadets in basic NCO course as well as advanced NCO course. So for now, perhaps I'll give you another 2 minutes to think about what are the traits a leader needs. Imagine if you are a trainer in an NCO course, what are the traits that you might need in order to lead a team in the forming stage? Maybe perhaps think of day one of the camp. Okay, so 2 minutes to just briefly think through these questions. Okay, maybe just about 30 more seconds to think about the questions. Afterwards, I'll get some of you guys to share about your responses towards these questions. Okay, sorry for the timer. Okay, so let's see. How about Jeremiah from Kanji?
All right. Yeah. This is Jeremiah from Kanji. All right.
Jeremiah,
So
I
I
think you
think
gotta be
one of the
louder.
important, I think one of the most important traits a leader needs in.
Jeremiah, can't hear you. Sorry.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Okay, can. Yeah.
Okay. So I think one of the most important traits a leader must have at this stage, I think, is patience, because these people are just like, I don't know, a bunch of random strangers just coming together and just to do something. They still need time to work out what's what and what you have to do. So you need to be patient. Yeah, because they can't just expect them to know each other, like, I don't know, they have telepathic community or something. So you just need a so a leader needs to have a lot of patience. Otherwise, this thing is not gonna get done.
Yeah. Okay. Fair point. So, okay, thank you for your response. Let me get someone else. So for the second question, what are the key areas of discussion that a group might have at the forming stage? That's good. Cheng Hao, are you there?
Yes.
Hi Cheng Hao. Yeah.
Hi. Uh, I'm not too sure because I think it varies from group to group.
Mm. Okay, that's fair as well. Okay, okay. Nevertheless, that is a very good point. That actually most of y'all can think about it. That within each group, perhaps there'll be different key areas of discussion. Okay, so maybe some of does anyone have any particular uh, response to the second question regarding the key areas of discussion that a group might have? If not, I'll just move on to it. Okay, so I guess I'll move on lah. There'll be a lot more sharing later, anyways. Okay, so in the sorry, so in the eh, sorry, okay, so in the first phase of team development, actually a leader, as what rightly pointed out by Jeremiah, patience is very important. Apart from patience, decisiveness, having a clear direction is all very important to give like a team who is very much confused at the start when they just formed up, they don't know where to go. So as a leader, your task here is really to be more instructional, to be more task oriented, so that you give your teammates a good grasp of the situation, and everyone is aligned as to where to go from here lah. So actually, many of you might find yourself at this stage right now. As NCOs back then, when I first became an NCO, it was quite appalling to switch from a cadet mindset to an NCO, because suddenly from being told what to do, now you are to plan what to do for your corps. So this is a stage of confusion, and maybe for the platoon commanders as well, when you're commanding your platoons, you find that this is the first time you guys are getting to know your platoons, and it is at this initial stage that direction really matters a lot, and that might be something that you want to focus on more. So that brings me to my second point. The key areas of discussion that a group will have will, of course, be to set targets, to set timelines. For various groups, as correctly pointed out by Cheng Hao, there will be different things, different timelines, different targets, but all the same, this broad structure is what you want set out. Is what are the key areas that you want to cover at the start, at the forming stage. Okay, so let's move on to the next stage. Okay, storming. So in this phase, back to the farming group of friends. Some of your teammates tell you as their leader about their opinion. The orange hair guy wants to buy a big water can. The tomato man thinks that the water can's not worth the money. Broccoli girl is trying to state the health value of vegetables maybe, and the spade girl is just cursing profanities. The black hair girl. Yeah. So at this phase, you can see that there is a lot of emotional tension between the teammates, and there's somewhat a communication barrier because everyone just wants him or herself to be heard. So once again, I guess when I was thrown into a new group of committee, as well as when I was NCO myself, I felt this strongly because um, it shifted from having to just work within your clique to having to forcefully work with people that you don't usually interact much with, and that might suddenly arise to a lot of new tensions that you never thought you had before. Yeah. So okay, pause for 3 minutes now to think of the following questions and write your answers down. So after 3 minutes, once again, I'll be calling some of you guys to answer these questions. So first of all, why is the storming stage potentially damaging for a team? And after recognizing that it is potentially damaging, why is it necessary for teams to still go through this uh, somewhat rocky phase of their leadership journey? And like previously, what are the important traits a leader needs to have in order to lead a team at this stage? Remember that in the context of an NCO team, actually all of you guys are leaders and followers at the same time. So this question applies to everyone, not just the CSM of the core, but each NCO has the responsibility to think of this question. Okay, I think I've been talking a lot, so just about 2 more minutes to think about these questions. Okay. Yeah. Let's hear some of your responses now. How about Raikyo? It's an interesting name. Am I pronouncing it right? Raikyo? Yeah. Can I hear from you guys? Can I hear from your response about the questions? Raikyo, you're muted. Okay, it's okay. Perhaps we'll get another person then. How about he's still muted leh? No, never mind lah. Okay, how about Zhixian from Kanji Sec?
Hello?
Hi. Was it Zhixian? Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes.
Zhixian. Okay, so why do you think a storming stage is potentially damaging for a team?
It can distance people out. Like sometimes you don't agree on stuff, then makes it very frustrating for other people. So if people are being distant out, then it'll be harder for people to work as a team.
Okay, can. Let's choose someone else for the next question. How about just you give me a name?
From my core.
Or anything lah. It's up to you, man.
Uh,
All your comments are smiling.
can I not call?
Oh, you don't have to be given the responsibility to call it. I just call one guy out lah. You're encouraging them to share the response. Call your best friend.
Or I call Li Han.
Oh, okay, Lihan smiling at you, man. Lihan, you knew that you were gonna be caught, right? That's why you're smiling.
I don't know.
Oh, okay, now you know lah. Okay, so Lihan, why is it necessary then? Okay, since Justin covered how this storming stage might damage a team, why do you still think that it's necessary for teams to go through this stage?
I think it's still necessary for teams to still go through this stage because the everyone should know each individual's own ideas so that they can collate the ideas together and then they'll pick out the best ideas from the individual ideas. So it will be like the storming stage will be like a phase that some ideas will get rejected and some ideas will get chosen.
Okay, wow, okay. So that's quite a high level response. Thank you, Lihan. So that covers both the same question and also key areas of discussion that a group might have at the storming stage. Okay, so I enjoyed that response. Okay, so as both of them correctly pointed out, the storming stage is potentially damaging for a team because of all the tensions that if left unresolved can really lead to major consequences. And as Lihan correctly pointed out, yes, there is bound to be conflict eventually because everyone really thinks differently, right? So regarding any issue, if you put a group of people together, there will be conflict eventually on how to do something. And this conflict actually allows the differences to be confronted so that as Lihan said, some ideas are rejected, some ideas are chosen, and ultimately a mutual understanding can be reached. And that's what we want lah. So that brings us to the next question: what a leader needs to have in this stage? So, oh my god, I just had a boomer moment. Okay, so a leader at this stage needs to be patient, right? So to be patient, so as to manage the conflict that is arising in his team, and also empathetic, so that can listen and understand the concerns of your team. So now think about this interesting question. So as a patient leader, what sort of leadership style will you be using? Maybe I get Zhixian, but from Hua Chuang to answer this question.
So can you repeat your question?
No, not you. Sorry. Yeah, you. I was looking at the kanji Zhixian, the HCI Zhixian. So what do you think a leader needs at this stage to lead a team during the storming phase? The third question.
He definitely needs empathy because he needs to understand what his team members are thinking about. And then he also needs to agree to disagree, because the purpose of this storming stage is, after all, to like reach a consensus after like resolving this kind of like conflict.
Definitely. So the follow-up question is, so now that he needs these characteristics, what are the leadership styles that he needs to adopt?
Democratic, I would say.
Democratic. Okay.
Because this storming stage is where like you gather all the ideas, all this. So yeah, you're in a way just like listening to everyone. Yeah.
Okay. Can. How about Riley from Countryside?
Yes.
Hi, Riley. So same thing. Regarding the third question, what are some important traits that a leader needs to have? So apart from empathy, since that has been covered by Jason.
Patience.
Patience. Yes. Actually, I covered that as well. Is there anything else that you think a leader needs to have, given that his team is in basically chaos right now? Like everyone is shouting their own ideas across the room. Or if anyone wants to help her, you may unmute yourself and help Riley out.
So I think the leader needs to be observant.
Hey, sorry, introduce yourself first so I can know who you are.
I'm Cheng Hao from Hwa
Oh, hello. Yeah.
I think the leader needs to be observant towards how each person is reacting to the other people, like in the argument. So you can gauge how to react to their argument. Like maybe you can turn to become more authoritative, or maybe you want to listen to them and try to facilitate their discussion or argument.
Okay. So some good responses there. Okay, so thank you, Cheng Hao. And Riley have been saved. But don't worry, I'll call upon you again next time. Okay, so definitely, what was brought up was interesting points that patience, empathy, observation. These are traits that a leader needs to have. And beyond these traits, what are the styles that a leader is employing? He's employing democratic leadership, as mentioned by some of you, and as mentioned by Cheng Hao, he might need to be more authoritative as well, more autocratic leadership. He might need to make the final call when everybody is, in potential chaos, just in a very messy state. So as a leader, someone needs to step out and say like, hey, I think we should go in this direction or in that direction. And in order for that to happen, there needs to be a more firm sort of leadership being employed lah. So here you can see that how in the same phase, still in the storming stage, there can be many sorts of leadership styles employed in different ways to manage the team. So lastly, for the key area of discussion, actually most this has already been largely covered by you guys, by Li Han, but I'll just brief again. Actually, we just largely involve after the rejection of some ideas and acceptance of some, is to come to a common consensus of what is the mutual understanding between the team, a new norm and a new system that everyone is agreeable to working with. So this is the storming stage, and it brings us forward into the next stage. It's again the norming stage. Okay, so at the norming stage, see how in this stage everyone has gotten into the car. They have somewhat agreed, water can or broccoli or tomato or whatnot to like, hey, we need to go and buy seeds now. Let's get a task rolling. So the farmers have overcome their conflict. So you guys now are in the third stage, and what happens here? So you see that everyone on the team starts to reach a common understanding about who should plant what, who is good at sowing, who is good at spreading the fertilizers, who is good watering. So I hope that even though I'm using a farming analogy, right, you all can still think of this in a St. John context, in your own core context. So you start to recognize your peers' strengths and weaknesses, and you see how you may work together to overcome your differences and even cover each other's flaws to become a stronger team overall. So at this stage, what does a leader need to do? So go to the following link to insert your responses, so I can just pick them from there. So remember now that it's a storming, it's the norming stage. You have come out from storming. So you have set a new system, you're moving towards this system. And as a leader now, what are the key characteristics that you need in order to lead your team to excel in this stage? Okay, sorry. So I'll give you all 2 minutes. 2 minutes to post your responses. So after 2 minutes, I will start looking through and sharing these responses. Okay, so maybe about 30 seconds more just to finish up whatever you're typing. Okay, I'm seeing some interesting responses. Oh, okay, I think I'll have to get Xu Yuan to share. Okay, hold on. Let me share my screen. Oh, okay. You guys can see my screen, right?
Norming. It's norming, right?
Yeah. I'm going to share on norming. Okay. Hi, Xuan. So I noticed that you've had quite an extensive response that looks interesting. Would you like to share more?
Okay. So during norming, right, it's basically when everyone agrees on something already and they start to like execute something, right? So during that stage, right, actually the leader, like the most important thing is that the leader must trust their teammates. Because usually when we split the job to them, right, most of the leaders wouldn't trust their teammates on doing certain things because they think that they won't do it or they don't have confidence in their teammates. So this is the most important thing to me. Yes, and another one is understandable because like when they start to execute something, right? So because when you split them into groups and when they start to execute a certain things, they will do it in different ways. Like it's not a way that you expected lah. So this is another thing that I think so.
Okay, thanks, Xuan. I noticed someone else here. Riley. Hi, Riley. So I said that I will call on you again I noticed that you even posted a link there. So would you like to elaborate on your response?
Okay. So like during the norming, so like a member needs to learn how to cooperate with each other towards a common goal. So and like they need to like share their opinions where like conflict may happen. So harmony is important and a leader must be democratic to listen to everyone's voice.
Okay, can. So leader must apply more of a democratic style now. It's interesting that you have brought in leadership styles here. Okay, a lot of responses here. Maybe we just have one more response. Enzo from HCI. Enzo, I noticed you only wrote one line, so perhaps I'll get you to elaborate more on this line.
Yes. Hello. So basically we addressed that in the previous stage there's going to be a lot of like tension and arguments between the different members, right?
Yeah.
So when we come over to make these differences between the different group members has to be resolved so that we can continue on with the main goal. And then once you resolve these differences, um, you can unite under a common goal, which is to accomplish what you've originally set up to do so. So yeah, that's what I think happens. A good leader would want to ensure happens in this stage.
So my next question to you is, so now imagine that you are the leader, and right now your members, they're having differences, and your job now is that you need to resolve these differences, right? How are you gonna do it? Because it's gonna become a very realistic situation that you might face once you're in NCO and beyond. Enzo, are you still there?
Uh, uh, so you have to be like a good mediator though, to find like common ground and something that everyone can work for together.
Actually, what you're describing now sounds a bit more like the previous stage, where you're still finding
Oh
the common
no.
ground. So now that once you have found the common ground, and maybe what you're trying to say is the residue, like some small differences that you're trying to resolve. Are you in a highly confused stage right now?
Yes.
Okay. You know what? I think I'll call on somebody to let you understand as he talks now. Maybe Enzo, you call on one of your batchmates.
Oh, okay. Chen Rui. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Sherry.
Hi.
Hi. So you want to elaborate on your response?
So basically my response is the leader needs to ensure that the members are cooperative and remain focused towards the common goal. So I think I wrote this because the leader needs to make sure that the members remain focused, probably because the process sometimes it may take a long time, and then sometimes the members get demotivated or something. So I think it's the leader's role to make sure the members stay motivated and still have the passion towards the goal.
Okay. A very fair point brought up. Okay, so moving back to Enzo. So Enzo, do you kind of get a picture now? Is it clearer now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, fine. I'll call you again, same as Riley. Okay, moving back to the presentation. Let me sort out this technology. Okay, yes. So as most of you have shared, trust is very, very important at this stage because when you're opening up the floor for your teammates to start, developing themselves, to start shining, trust is absolutely critical because if you give off the impression that you're still doubtful that the team can achieve, you're still largely like trying to manage them, then it might backfire and cause them to move back into like the storming phase because everyone uh, they have sort of gotten the after the storming phase, they have sort of reached the new norm. But when this new norm isn't being given enough trust, they'll just move back into the storm again. You can visualize this. So also, as well, some of y'all have mentioned, to just be more open-minded in general to what your teammate is saying, to more suggestions that might be coming in. Because now that you guys have achieved somewhat mutual understanding, you see that more and more people are getting on board with this idea, and there are more initiatives that are being generated out. So at this stage, it is crucial to keep these initiatives coming. And as what was correctly pointed out by you guys as well, is to stay committed to the goal, to not lose sight of what is this end of the day thing that you're trying to achieve, so that this initiative remain aligned to what you're trying to do. Okay, so now we have very quickly arrived at the last stage of team development. So at this stage known as performing, your team should be absolutely flourishing and harvesting your ripe tomatoes and your crunchy broccolis at this stage. So each of your friends, they know exactly how everyone else works. There's an upgrade to the norming stage. Not just who is going to water the plants, but even how much water is going to use to water these plants. Not just who is going to plant tomatoes, but what breed of tomato he likes to plant. With this greater understanding that builds over time, the team now respects one another. There's this respect, there's the difference that's being built. The team trusts one another to be able to produce quality work. In fact, if you're the admin head and I'm the development head, I'm not going to interfere with what you're doing because you're the subject matter expert lah. You're the expert of what you're doing, and there's this mutual trust and respect being built up. So with that being said, it's also very easy now to manage problems because everyone is in a much more mature state to constructively overcome these problems and disagreements. Okay, so at this stage, what is a leader's job? What should he focus on? Okay, Yuka, what do you think? There will be no time to think for this question.
I think the leader's job at
Yeah,
this
you need to
stage
speak
is-
up.
Sorry?
You need to speak up a bit more.
Okay. Can you
Yeah.
hear me? Yeah. So I think the leader's job at this stage is to supervise the team and make sure everyone is doing their job properly and settle conflicts.
Supervise their team, make sure everyone is doing their job properly. And what was the last one?
And to settle conflicts.
And to settle conflicts. Okay. But that's actually like quite a broad scope. So if I was to give you like one main thing that you need to do, what do you think he needs to do?
To make sure people are doing their job.
To make sure people are doing their job. So more of like a supervising role lah. Right? Am I
Yeah.
correct to say that?
Yeah.
Okay, so given that's the role, then what trait do you think he needs to have?
He needs to have diligence to check on his teammates.
Okay, fair. Thank you for your response. Okay, let's get Enzo. Enzo, are you back now with us at the performing stage? Enzo?
Wait, sorry. I was lagging. Yes. Wait. Can you do that? Can you say the question again?
Oh, okay, can Enzo. So the question is, okay, first of all, were you lagging when we were talking about the performing stage? Are you clear of what this stage is about? Shall I go back one slide for you? So you
Yes.
heard this part?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we go back to the thinking question. So now that your team is absolutely flourishing, right? What as a leader now do you have to do? What is your main focus? Think up. Is it about the people? Is it about the task? If it's about the people, what do you need to focus on? If it's about a task, what do you need to focus on?
I mean, I guess at this point you kind of have to like mm, I mean, at this point, I guess like the leader kind of goes into like a more like a supervising role because everybody is doing their own thing. So you have to be able to like uh make sure that so you have to be able to make sure that all of your like members are on task and like and they're doing it well lah. So I guess the leader needs to be able to like engage everybody fully so that they can do their thing and do it well.
So supervise your team as well as uh, be committed to engaging your team throughout the process. Okay, can. So what? Okay, one more question, Enzo. So if you got to use a style now, what leadership style will you be employing at this stage?
The what's the name? The very long one. Wait.
Okay, the very long one. Anyone want to help him recall the long name?
Oh, I
You mean
remember
that
the lesser flare, something like that.
Yeah, Lucifer. Okay, but good try. Yes, that's correct. Okay, so yes, a leader. Okay, let's go back to the previous slide first. A leader at this stage, as you correctly pointed out again, yes, the supervising role is very important at this stage. And apart from just focusing on your people as well, I mentioned that there is a need to focus on the task now. So the task at hand now is not just the micro things that you are doing, the micro conflicts, but now that everybody is on board and actually performing as a team, your task that you need to focus on now is a more macro scale one, a more wide scale one. So what trait you need is perhaps foresight. You need to start thinking ahead, to start looking ahead to see like, okay, now that we're doing very well at where we are now, what more can we do? What further can we go from here? So that's the step that many NCO batches in my years as a junior officer, they sometimes miss out this step so that they reach a basic minimum capacity where they're performing their jobs well, but beyond that there is no what more can we do, what further can we go from here. So that is one thing that as a leader, not just a CSM as I said, but all of you guys, you need to think of how you can lead your team, be your platoon, be your member and the department members of your department, etc. You need to think how more can we achieve. Okay, so what is one insight you guys have gained about the role of a leader in building a successful team? You have now come across all four stages. So forming, then the team goes into storming, norming, and lastly performing. So through these stages and applying all the different styles of leadership, what is the role of a leader in building a successful team? Sorry, let's not say what is the role. What is an insight you've gained about the role of a leader? Okay, so let's get perhaps Yi Hong to share.
Hello.
Hi, Yihong.
One insight I gain about the role of a leader is that it's very crucial and important in a team, in building a successful team. Uh,
Okay, I give you a bit more time to think. Okay. But I also agree that a leader is very important in building a successful team. That's why they're called leaders. Okay, how about Xuan, since you're smiling?
Actually, can I have time to think also?
Okay, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so amongst you guys, any brave souls, any creative souls that really have an answer in your head? Jeremiah, I see you thinking.
Okay, do you mind if I just say a few things?
Sure.
Also, a leader. So essentially, the most hardest part for any team is the storming phase, right? So a leader is pretty much just trying to help the teams resolve their differences, and help them come to a complete consensus on getting something done. That's my understanding about the role of a leader. Is to get is to keep the team together and help them overcome the differences and get them to work towards a common goal, whether that be planting a garden or something like that.
Okay, nice. So I hope that time has allowed the rest of you guys to think about your responses as well. But thank you for the response, Jeremiah. Okay, there are actually a few more questions, so I'll just show them all of them first. Okay, so two more questions. So apart from the insight about leadership, as well as further, how does this relate to your understanding of leadership styles? You can bring this into your sharing as well. How different types of leaders that I've covered earlier in the morning manage the team at each step of team development. Okay, how about Sean from Hachong? Hi, Sean. If you're there, just unmute yourself. Okay,
Hello.
hello. So, with reference to the, actually, I'll give you freedom to answer any of these questions, or you can have a combined answer as well.
So I'll answer the first question, the one inside.
Sure. You mind just upping your speaker volume as well?
So
Hmm.
one insight that I learned was that leaders must be able to respect each other's skills and be familiar with how everything works so that they can lead effectively.
Okay. So let's have an elaboration. So on to the second question. How does how does this uh how does this relate to the different leadership styles that you have learned in the previous lecture for BNCC? So in this process of trusting each other as teammates, how can you apply the different styles?
For example, like in servant leadership, mm, the leader lets the other members think about let the other members decide on what they want to do. So this will be how the leader is familiar with how everyone works, since the leader knows what the members want to do.
Okay. I think you're sort of there. The idea is correct in the sense that yes, as a servant leader, you want to build your guys. So there's one style you might want to develop in the sense that of course, building your guys is very much interlinked with respecting your team members and allowing them the free space. So yes, there is some service some servant leader aspect to that. Okay, thank you for your sharing. Maybe I'll get Shi from Nanyang. Hi, Shi.
Hi.
Yeah, so same as Sean, you're free to just give us a reflection about these three questions in any order or anyone in particular.
I'll talk about the insight. Like for me, I've learned that in building a successful team, the leader needs to change their leadership style throughout the process.
Yes, okay. So that is a fair point. Then how will you foresee yourself using these different leadership styles in each of these stage of team development as an extension to your response?
So during the forming and storming stages, the leader has to step in and actually be more autocratic per se to make sure that the team is being guided into the right direction and doing what they're supposed to do. But during the norming and performing stage, the leader can sit back and have a more democratic sort of view on the team and let them do their job and just being there to keep them on track.
Okay, so there's some interesting responses I see here. Okay, so given that was a good response, allow me to just push you a little more. Okay, so now, as you've said, let's go back to, let's say, storming. You said to have a more autocratic style. Now let's think of another variable factor to this problem. Now that in this storming stage, your team can be either a bunch of Sec 1s, maybe your platoon 1 PC, or maybe platoon 3, your platoon 3 PC. So in these two storming phases, what would you think you would tweak about the leadership styles?
I will feel that in dealing with my Sec 1s, for example, I have to be more autocratic per se because they don't actually know a lot of technicalities about how to handle situations and such. But for Sec 3s, I can be a bit more laid back and just be there to watch them, make sure they are not being distracted.
Yeah, so that was the idea I was going for, yes. But of course, definitely, even though they are Sec 3s, as a team, they'll still go through this storming phase. Okay, so before that, thank you, Shi, for the excellent response. So even as Sec 3s, they'll also go through this storming phase for sure. And that stage, I'll say that autocratic leadership might be needed in some extent, but perhaps less as compared to when you're leading a group of more inexperienced cadets. Because you might find that once you set a firm tone, things might pick up fast, and you might find yourself switching to a softer tone, a more democratic tone, that in a very short amount of time. Okay, excellent. Let's move on. Okay, so the key learning point here is, as most of you have rightly pointed out, to build a successful team, leadership style needs to be changed, and that's according to the needs of the team, according to your demographics, according to the situation, according to the stage of the Tuckman stages of team development that you're at. Okay, so next of all, which of these four stages would teams find themselves stuck at, and why? So one formation would be helpful in allowing the leader to work through this stage. To build a successful team. Okay, so actually, I feel that at this point, all of us can agree that mostly we'll find ourselves stuck at the storming stage because that's when conflict arises, right? So my point of this slide is to bring you guys to the next part of the presentation and the last part of today, which is conflict management. So conflict management is commonly caused when there's a communication breakdown, when people start fighting for power in the team. Sounds like a familiar stage. And sometimes there might be personal problems involved as well, which might get a bit tricky there. So let's do an activity. In the next few slides, this will involve the chat room a lot. So please on your chat. The next few slides, I'll show you guys a bunch of pictures, and just spam the chat room with the first few emotions that come to your mind when you see the picture. Emotions are what you feel, so I'm looking for words like happy, sad, angry, frightened, joyful, surprised, confused, bored, disgusted, anything. So open your chat room, and here goes. I'll spend about a few seconds on each one. Okay, next one is lagging. Well done, you guys are spamming the chat. Do more. I see some disgusted faces. Okay. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the slides. Okay, so as you have seen, we have 53 emotions in the chat box, and they range from many things. There are people that are relaxed, there are people that are angry, there are people that feel fun, excited, calm, relieved, tired, disgusted, soothing, and many more. So what have we learned from this? What have we learned is that everybody feels a certain emotion towards things, right? And because we bring to the table, we come from different backgrounds, we experience different things in life. So while the subject might be the same, it might be broccoli, it might be Donald Trump, but different people looking at these things might feel differently. So this highlights that as a leader, it is important that you understand the different needs of your team, and you empathize with it. You understand that, and thus you hear the perspective in order to build a common ground between your team members. So the first step to a conflict would then be to acknowledge the conflict first. A common mistake is people like to do is they avoid conflict, thinking that as time passes, maybe the conflict would just dissolve on its own. That might work at times. Cracking a bad joke when our atmosphere is very tense, just telling people to calm down and forgetting the incident. But sometimes when you avoid this conflict, it might also lead to a very negative outcome where this conflicts just become unresolved tension that will affect you realize the entire course of your NCO journey, and that's not something what we want to happen. And the tricky part about this is when you avoid the conflict, it's often very hard to come back to it. Let's say you had a fight with your friend. It involved a clash of beliefs. One of your friends feels that, hey, I think this call deserves more recreational time, more time to have fun. I think we're not focusing on that enough. But some members feel that the regimentation has been dropping. No, I don't think this is the time for fun. These deep-seated values differences cause conflicts that if you just ignore it, throw it away to one side, it will cause a hidden tension that will eventually affect your NCO-ship in the entire journey of the entire year lah. So the first step is to acknowledge the conflict. Don't avoid the conflict, but take note of point 2. Please reduce the immediate tension. So this is an extreme example, but back in the army, I have soldiers that when they get into an angry conflict and angry fight, people hold a scissors and they run towards the other person. That there is a very extreme example of immediate tension that needs to be reduced, because something destructive, something extreme, sometimes they would affect the team morale and cause consequences that cannot be reversed lah. So these are also situations where, as a leader, you get tricky, but you have to judge on the spot and be decisive as to hey, when should I step in and lower the conflict? When should I not? So then, if some of you guys have actually watched the football team video, the one about the Titans, you realize that there was actually a part of the video where the football team got into a small fight, an argument, and then the coach was about to step in, but the other person say like, hey, like let's chill for a while, let them settle it their own way. And that actually allowed them to realize, okay, the third point, that the problem exists and that, hey, there's something wrong with the current way that the team works and we need to resolve it. So acknowledging the conflict brings you to the commitment, the third point, where everyone agrees that the problem exists, everyone promises, everyone sits down and agrees that like we should solve this problem. So only then can we move on to the second step. So start clarifying, start understanding and communicating with each other by clarifying your perspectives. So in this step, you need time for everybody to voice out their opinions and justify their opinions. You can see that even when I'm getting some of you guys to share, many of you will require time to think of the response, will require time to justify your feelings to certain issues. So in this step, the time is important. Give people the time and the space to really think through what they want to say so that this discussion can be meaningful. So next is to separate out what is said into facts, assumptions, and beliefs. So I think this is quite a useful model because it helps everyone to see the logic behind the statements being made. Okay, to understand and respect the personal beliefs that we each may have, to state the facts that are unchanging, but also to dispel any assumptions that are present that might have caused this misunderstanding in the first place. Then lastly, another pro tip, I guess, is to begin this process in small groups. Because think of it as spreading your individual tension out into like 5 people. Amongst 5 people, you discuss about this. Immediately, you feel a bit better. Maybe sometimes you had a bad day, and you complain to your parents when you're like, trying to like get people to understand you. In that process itself, the tension is already being resolved slowly. So once in these small groups, you have gotten your consensus. Now you regroup into your team, into your entire team, or maybe the entire corps, the entire platoon, to analyze this issue together. This is when you can come into emotionally an agreement, and physically you can start to think of plans or actionable steps of which you can resolve the conflict. And yeah, so this is when for this stage, what you need to take away is that the plan needs to be specific. It needs to be actionable. It needs to be as detailed as possible so that everyone can review this plan from time to time to see whether you're fulfilling your agenda and this agreement is being met. So lastly, as a leader and even as a friend, remember to watch and also praise your team when they make the effort to compromise and to resolve the conflict. So this reassures each of y'all that you guys are going in the right way. And take note of the words in the purple box that a team fresh out of the storming phase may easily go back into storming. And because of that, close supervision and guidance is actually recommended to ensure that this team can successfully cross the storm and move on from the norm to really start performing as a team. Okay. So that's it. That's the last step of resolving a conflict, and I've also covered the 4 stages of team development. So as the last activity of the day, I want you guys to just spend the last 3 minutes to think of this question. So actually, the response to this question, you have to respond at the end of the day quiz, but I will just pick a few of you to respond now to hear some of your sharing and give some of my feedback as well. So last 3 minutes. about a final 10 seconds to just think about the response. Okay, would anybody like to volunteer to share? Okay, if not, I'll be choosing people. Okay, so first, Xu Yan, you did manage to share just now, eh?
Hi. Okay. So I think to me, right, the first thing that I would do for this, right, is let them to sit down together and talk about it. Because I think that the like the thing, like the conflict that they are having, right, is because they don't understand why both sides want that. Like they don't know why they want bonding activities or why they want person lesson. So maybe they can sit down together and talk about like their rationale behind these activities that they wanted to. Yes.
Okay, so following that, after they talk about the rationale,
After that, right, maybe they can like after they understand, right, maybe they can more like they will have another decision lah. Maybe they will change their mindset and maybe to go with one side of it lah, rather than now which is split.
okay. So you're leaning towards choosing one over the other.
Yes.
One for the other. Okay. Okay. Thank you for your response. How about Alicia from Bukit Panjang?
Hi.
Hi,
Hi.
Alicia.
Um, um, I would resolve the conflict by trying to perhaps one training can do more of first aid and then the other training can do more of bonding activities.
Okay. So let's say I'm the instructor now, and I argue. Okay, so how if you do one day first aid and one day bonding, then CSM, how is this spending more time on first aid? Then if I'm on the one on the other side, I'll be like, how is this spending more time on bonding? So now you have two groups who are both unhappy. So now what will you do?
Um, 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 um,
Okay. Think it's okay. These problems are meant to be easy to solve, and that is why they're problems. Go through the steps of conflict management that we've learned.
I can start acknowledging the conflict first. And after that, I can try to like
Okay, so before that, so acknowledge the conflict. How are you going to acknowledge this conflict? What exactly will you say?
um
For the rest, think of this question as well. When we are talking about acknowledging a conflict, what exactly will you say? That it's easy in theory, but hard in practice. Okay, yeah, sure. I'll just leave you with that thought. Perhaps I'll get someone else. How about Asia?
Yes.
How would you resolve this conflict?
First, I would like conduct a first aid lesson. Then, like for the bonding activities, I will like make the activity such that like it involves the first aid stuff.
Okay. Okay, interesting. So you find a way in which you spend the time to do both activities at the same time. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Fair. So back to the first question, when you're acknowledging the conflict, what are you gonna say to these instructors who feel so differently about this?
I mean, I would ask them to calm down first, like say like what's their problem, like slowly and yeah.
Okay. The idea is there. Okay. Thank you, Asjad. Okay. So I think so far we've had a good sharing. Before I move on, does anyone have a specific reflection or resolution to this conflict that you'd like to share?
So can I share?
Sorry, who?
I'm Chong Hao.
Sure.
So basically, I think, firstly, I think we need to guide, because when you have a conflict, I think as like you need to act as a mediator, so you need to step in between them. And the most important thing is not to understand the rationale behind their behavior or thoughts. I think the most important thing is to know their objective. And since the objective is to have like bonding activities and first aid lessons, you need to put a balance between them because it's a spectrum to see where try to take the middle of that. So I think like maybe you can host a first aid competition, let's say. You like inter-corp first aid competition, let's say you allow people to bond, is also allow people to recount on their first aid skills. Yeah, something like that.
Okay, fair response. Thank you, Cheng Hao. Building on that, I suggest, through your first aid competitions, you can even further make it a point to raise like, hey, through this first aid competition, it's evident that perhaps the bonding is really more lacking. Perhaps the first aid standard is more lacking, and through that, you all can reach further objectives lah. That's just my 2 cents. Okay, so this is a quote before end of the day. So now what's going to happen is I'll recap of what we have learned for today, and also before I do that, through this lecture we have learned about the 4 stages of team development. We have learned about the 4 steps for conflict management. Earlier in the day we have learned about 4 basic leadership styles. So after learning all this theory, I'll open the floor for any questions that you all might have as well. So if anybody has any questions, maybe take some time to think about it, and then you can post it in the chat. You can raise it. Yeah. So okay. So generally in these responses, I can see that most of you have understood the main objective of this lecture, which is good. For team effectiveness, always rises over time. Some of you chose true, but actually the correct answer is false. So to clarify on this, if you can see from the graph that was shown a while ago, you start off at a norming stage where your team effectiveness actually drops to the storming stage. Then at the storming stage, it rises again when you all start, clarifying on your procedures, on your new norms, on your new common ground. So at norming, the team effectiveness rises, and at performing is when you truly start shining individually and start working together as a team as well, where your team effectiveness peaks. But even then, right, we can really see that team effectiveness does not always rise over time, because from norming to storming it drops, correct? But even then, let me just inject another scenario in your head. So earlier on, I mentioned that there was actually a fifth stage, adjourning. So adjourning is when the team achieves hopefully its agenda and it disbands. So that's the fifth stage after performing. So after a team disbands, when maybe after two months, after a period of time, and you come back again in a new team, in a new project work setting, in a new classroom, or a new, in any social setting, when you come into a new team, you will then again be transported back to the first stage of norming, where you then start this cycle once again. So you find yourself, the team effectiveness at norming, and then dropping to storming, rising over the time. Then after you adjourn, you restart the cycle all over again. Apart from that, within the cycle itself, remember how I talked about in storming, it was possible to progress to become a norming stage. But afterwards, if as a leader you don't manage the expectations of your team well, if your team is left on their own too long and they're misaligned, they can quickly fall back to storming. So the same applies actually to all stages, be it you're at norming or you're at storming, maybe you're at performing. In any of these stages, if this stage as a leader you don't manage your team well, and eventually chaos runs over your team, you might find your team degrading back into the stages instead of performing. So team effectiveness definitely is at a constant oscillation. It doesn't always rise over time, and it really largely depends on you as a leader to ensure that you manage your team well, such that even during the storming phase, you can overcome it and eventually bring your team to become an effective one. Okay, so the next two questions are answered well. We have full scorings.
Back to the questions of the lecture.
Sorry.
Back to the questions of the lecture, please.
Okay, so let's cover the questions that we mentioned earlier. So as the sharing earlier, when I gave you a scenario to reflect upon, I think most of you are quite shy, so you all took some time to think about your response. But I'm glad to see that most of your response here sound very legitimate. There's a lot of listening going on, which is correct, and about how you get both sides to obviously calm down first and clarify their own perspectives before moving on. So these are good responses. Okay, and for those, I noticed that some of you all put shorter responses, but I do hope that you all give the question deeper thought, even though like your response was only maybe like a line or two, because eventually these scenarios will hit you guys, be it in CCA or when you go out in a team setting. When you face problems, not only as a core chairperson, as a in any position you might be, when your team goes through a rocky phase in development, you will be confronted with the question of how to resolve the conflict. So it's better that you really think through these solutions now than be faced with it later and have to think through it. Okay, so share two insights you have gained about the role of a leader. I learned that a leader must be able to resolve the tensions between the members. Leaders are to be flexible in their leadership styles, understand what to use what, to be patient and calm. Okay, excellent. Then the leader gives chance to his members to give ideas, and so the freedom for his members. Leader requires trust and must build trust definitely to be able to communicate with the team. Trust. Adapting a leadership for scenarios, compromising. Okay, great responses. Patience, yes, again, patience. Communication skills. Being understanding. Okay, yeah. So I think most of you have gotten the gist of being a leader. So to recap, really is about a lot of understanding and empathy on your part, especially during the storming phase when your team is having conflicts. So that is when you can really, you must really show your your listening skills, communication skills, as most of you have brought out. And trust, of course, is very important as well as you move forward into the norming stage where you leave your members more ownership to take charge of their job and to excel in them. Okay, great. Okay, I've seen this response earlier on, and most of y'all seem to have gotten the gist of the videos, so that's good. Again, this Avenger and Titans video, right, is a very good example of how teams don't only work in your NCO, but actually even amongst your own friends, your friends and your cliques, you can see a lot of this dynamics that form like sort of like a pattern, how you guys come together as friends, as teammates, as group mates, and afterwards you go through the same few phases. So it's very applicable to different stages in life. Okay. I'm happy to see that there's not much feedback. Okay, so don't have what? Oh, okay, there's one question. Okay, so there's a few questions. If the leader was the one who was having conflict with all the other members, what can we do exactly to it? Okay, so this is an interesting question. Actually, before I answer it, what do you guys think? Would anyone like to try answering this question? How about Yuan Long from Crunchy? Hi, Yuan Long.
Yes. What was the question again? Sorry.
Oh, no, you're still muted.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Maybe you try to up your speaker volume.
Hello.
Okay,
Hello?
it's okay. I think I'll leave you to troubleshoot. Let's get someone else. How about Li Han? So if you are the leader who are having the conflict with the other members, what can you do exactly to resolve this problem?
I'll be patient with them.
Sorry, can you repeat the answer again?
I'll force myself to be patient with them.
Force yourself to be patient. Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, patience is what is the key word here. I think if you're having a conflict with other members, it will require patience on your part. You also require a lot of self-reflection, of course. It's the same process actually. Who was having a conflict doesn't really matter. It's the same few steps that you need to go through. First, acknowledge the conflict. You yourself, now since you're the leader who has the conflict with the other members, you need to acknowledge that there is a conflict, which might be the hardest part if you're the one involved in this conflict. But only after you acknowledge that there's a problem and you commit to fixing the problem, then you can start clarifying your standpoints, what you believe in, what the other members believe in, and from there on you all can build understanding. Actually, who asked the question, if you don't mind? I hope this clarifies
It's
your doubt.
me. Yeah, it's me. Actually, I wanted to ask is that if like we are not the leaders but we are the members, right? And the leaders who are the one having conflict with us, what can we do to him? Because like he's the leader, he will do all the decisions, right? But yeah, and we don't have the rights to say anything.
Oh, okay, I understand the question. So this question is if you're in the standpoint of a member, your leaders can make a conflict. Okay, so actually this is a good question. It brings us back to earlier in the morning about leadership styles. So actually your leader, even though, correct, he is the one who is so-called making the decisions, but what you're thinking now is more geared towards like a maybe autocratic leader, where he's really the one making all the decisions. And if that in itself is causing a problem, it needs to be acknowledged. He needs to know. So whether or not he makes the final decision, it doesn't stop you guys as members from telling him like, hey, like right now this way that you're doing things is bothering us. We can't function properly as a team with just like one way ordering of what to do, what not to do, etc. So yeah, communication can still go on, and I mean definitely if let's say a leader doesn't listen, then we go back to review the conflict management. Step one, acknowledge the conflict, right? Then if that doesn't happen, then the conflict is hard to resolve lah. So definitely as a member, I would say work towards building the understanding, the acknowledgement that hey, there's a problem, and slowly move on from there. Okay, I hope that addressed your question. Okay, so then there's a next question. How do we practice leadership styles? Okay, so leadership styles, for now, as most of you, if not all, are NCOs, I think number one, a good platform to perform it on yourselves lah, because be it in your own NCO group or be it on the cadets, in whichever position you are, you could learn to see things not only. I think practicing not only comes in your self execution in leadership styles, in where like, but it also comes in observation. So, like, for one, you could, interact with your peers, you could interact with your juniors and even your seniors, and from there practice leadership styles. But secondly, you can also just observe how other people practice autocratic leadership, democratic leadership, servant leadership, and it's a firm. And as I said, right, actually earlier in the morning we covered these four basic types of leadership, but in throughout your journey in this CCA and even beyond, you see that there are many other sorts of ways in which people can communicate, can lead others, and from that you can gain a lot of experience as well, lah. I think that is not only so practice doesn't only come in how you do it, but it also comes in observing others as well. I hope that answers your question. Okay, if not, there are no other questions. And let me see whether there's anything else I have to cover. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Okay. Thanks, Tony. Okay. So, last call. Any questions for Tony, sir, before I let him take a break and listen to me? Can you stop sharing screen?